Welcome, folks, to Crypto News Global. I'm your host, Nick Toka. On today's show, tariffs come into play. Bitcoin dropped 8%. U.S. financial markets shed $2 trillion in value. Should traders expect an oversold bounce? Also, 10-year Treasury yield falls 4% as DXY softens. Is it time to buy the Bitcoin price dip? And Bitcoin still to hit 200,000 in 2025 despite Trump tariff unrest, says Analysts. All this and so much more on today's show. Welcome, folks, to Crypto News Global. I'm your host, Nick Toka. Today is April 3rd, 2025, and yes, the global tariffs took place yesterday. We talked all about it, went through all the specifics, specifically which countries, what the tariffs were going to be, and we also talked about the logic behind these tariffs on yesterday's show and where I feel the world is going with this and where Trump is going with this. The reaction from world leaders is ridiculous, and it's, continuing to show me nothing that they do is surprising. Nothing that the leaders are doing, most of them have any kind of value for any of these countries. It's a bit ridiculous, folks. I don't know where they hire these people and why it's almost like the only people who are running for government are people that have some kind of power trip issues. They really need some people with some foresight and some intellect in these presidential positions. I feel like as much as everybody's hating this Trump thing, I think he's doing what's best for his country, and I also think that he's simply doing this to try and alleviate the tariffs that the U.S. has been under for decades now. We saw that some countries have been tariffing the states up to 97% all these years, and states have no tariff. And now suddenly they put a tariff and everybody's crying. Well, think of it this way, right? Everybody's relying on American consumers, right? They're selling all their wares to the states. So what if instead of Trump putting tariffs, all the citizens of the states just said, you know what, fuck it. I'm not buying anything anymore. Wouldn't that be the same as these tariffs? Just think about it, folks. There's all these countries taking advantage, and they're basically saying enough is enough. Now, I already talked about it in depth yesterday. If these countries want to reduce or remove these tariffs from the states, firstly, I don't think they're going to be completely removed, but I think they could all come down to 10%. We already saw one leader. We saw the Israeli, and he came out and said, you know what, I'm dropping all tariffs for the U.S., 0 tariffs. This is a smart move, because now what's Trump going to do? Keep a 20, 30, 40% tariff on Israel, even though they just said we're dropping everything? No, they're going to come back and say, you know what? You guys are doing the right thing. We'll drop your tariffs to 10%, or we'll drop it to 0. Then conversely, we see the Canadian idiot, the Carney, who has not received one vote from Canadians, but yet was handed the prime minister's role because the other fool, Trudeau, stepped down. And instead of him, who has the most to gain here, right? He's only prime minister, an interim prime minister, until an election is held sometime in the summer or in the autumn this year. And I fully expect that the conservative guy, Poilievre, is going to win, even though the polls, it's just like the States, the polls, it seems like, are lying. Everywhere I see in these chat groups and on X, everybody's just calling this guy a fool, this Carney guy, which I agree with. But instead of coming back and, Canada has the most to gain from the States. Canada and Mexico, they're the number one trading partners, and they're right next door, right? Truck just drives across the border and sells the American their goods, including big industry. We're talking steel, oil, lumber, not just, textiles and shirts and socks and things. Instead of coming back saying, well, you know what, we should just reduce our tariffs, we're neighbors. No, we are putting a reciprocal tariff now of 25% on top of the 25%, on top of the 25%. These people are worse than children, folks. So we see a big dip in the markets today. The S&P down 5%, got whacked. NASDAQ was down, I think, 4%. NYSE, I think, 3%. And, of course, the BIDI, which had made it back up to 88,000, is now back at 83K. Solana hit 155 at some point. Doge hit, I think, just under 16. I didn't really check out XRP, but I suspect it probably hit around $2, maybe just above $2. Let's get into our market watch and Bitcoin technical analysis so we can look at the prices a little more closely. We've got the BIDI currently down 0.75% for a 24-hour period at $83,000. Ethereum down 2%, $17.95. Solana down 3.5%, $115. XRP currently up 0.25%, $2.06. Doge down 2.5% at 16 cents. Cardano down 1%, 64 cents. Let's get into our crypto bubbles, which show us, let's go actually into the hourly, and we see about a 50-50 mix in the hourly going into the daily. Again, when you look at a 24-hour period, it's not that insane. It's just another regular day. Pi losing 15%, Walrus losing 10%, the 10% it gained the other day. Barra down 10%, Sui down 8%. And there's a couple outliers that are on the positive. Grass, it's ganja time, up 12% on the day. Hex up 6%, Atom up 7.8%. Let's zoom out for the weekly. We've got EOS up 43%, Grass up 21%. Most everything else is in the red. That's about a 95-25 mix. Going into the monthly, we've got EOS up 54%, Chronos up 27%, Ton up 18%, CRV up 20%. Let's check out the crypto market cap. We've got Bitcoin sitting at $1.645 trillion, Ethereum 216 bill, XRP 120 billion, Solana 60 billion, Doge 24 billion, Cardano 23 billion, Tron 22.5 billion. So ultimately, it could have been a lot worse in terms of market cap, and unless this is not refreshed. No, it's refreshed. I mean, yesterday the market cap was at 2.69 trillion, I believe, and today we're at 2.62. We've got Bitcoin at just under 63% of the total dominance, 62.83%. Ethereum, 8.27%. XRP, 4.6%. We are currently sitting at a 28 in fear on the Crypto Fear and Greed Index. Yesterday was 25 in fear, and last week 44 in neutral. There are 1,005 days, 1,105 days left until the next Bitcoin halving 2028, with 159,225 blocks left still to mine. Assets by market cap. We've got gold, which is actually down a bit today in terms of market cap, at 21 trillion even. Apple at 3 trillion. Microsoft 2.7 trillion. Let's refresh this. Yeah, it's accurate. Nvidia 2.5 trillion. Amazon 1.9 trillion. Google 1.8 trillion. Silver 1.7. Saudi Aramco 1.697. Biddy 1.643, just behind Saudi Aramco. Facebook 1.3 trillion. You can currently get 1,206 satoshis for 1 US fiat dollar, and the debt clock keeps rising up 5 billion from yesterday, currently at 36,680 billion, which equals to 107,249 per U.S. citizen, or 323,048 per U.S. taxpayer. And let's also pay attention to the Doge savings clock. And they've saved $277 billion, and it's been about a month, which equals to, folks, $2,466 per taxpayer. So it's the only thing that's moving positively. I don't know why everybody's against this guy. They're closed-minded. It's the legacy media who's making these people look like shit. Everything else is going negative. Everything, right? Look at the debt clock for the U.S. national debt. Look how fast it's moving. And then you've got the Doge clock savings, and look how fast that's moving. Right? It's literally moving, since the time I brought it up, it's moved $1 million. So, yeah, what's really happening, if you want to read behind the lines, between the lines, is, and there, it's gone up another million since the time I said $1 million. Like, what was that, 15 seconds ago? Another savings of $1 million. Legacy media, the Democrats, basically, their gravy train, they see their gravy train ending, and this is what they don't like. So they're blasting through all the media, all the false information being sent out to all the poor taxpayers out there, and they're completely blind, like a flock of sheep following the leader. And they're basically saying, oh, you are bad, Elon. You are bad, Donald. And it's just insane. It seems to me that they are the only ones doing the right thing, and everybody else is criticizing it for. Like, who else, folks, has saved you, every single person in America, $2,500? Anybody? Right? Further to that, Trump's gone on the record to say that he wants to go back to the early 1900s where there was no tax on anything. And they just want to get revenue. Instead of taxing the citizens, they want to get their revenue from tariffs. So what the fuck is wrong with people? I just don't see. I guess they're just turning on CNN, and whatever CNN tells them, then that's what they're believing. But it seems to be the exact opposite. Like, if you want the full story, stop listening to CNN. You know who's really good? Ben Shapiro. Listen to this guy. He tells it how it is, Daily Wire, and it's facts. He doesn't sugarcoat things, and there's times where he says, I try and listen to that every day, to be honest, and he tries to be on an even level There was times when he's behind Trump. There's times when he says, well, I don't know if this is the greatest thing, and he's not with Trump. But I'll tell you, about 90% of the time, he's ripping into the Democrats, which are doing the wrong thing at all times. And I don't even need to listen to things like that. I can see with my own eyes right in front of us here, folks, $277 billion in however Trump's been in office. What was that now? 2 months? So they have saved you $2,500. If you're a taxpayer in the U.S., you have been saved $2,500 so far. So if you drag that into, many months, they very easily could save you $10,000. $10,000 per taxpayer. Then on top of that, let's say they actually go through and cut the taxes on citizens. The number one expense for citizens, look at your paychecks, folks. The number one expense, it's not your groceries, it's your taxes. Take a close look. It's not your groceries, it's not your gas, it's not your car payments. I strongly believe that your taxes are actually bigger than your mortgage payment every year. So think about that, and then think about what crud CNN and the legacy media is feeding you about what these guys are doing is wrong. Saved $2,500. They saved me $2,500, and they're going to cut my tax to zero, and I'm going to complain about this? Think about it, folks. Think hard. Sadly, I don't have 1 million subscribers yet to get the word out, but if you're listening, get the word out, or hey, get people to come and take a listen to my channel too and subscribe. And by all means, look, I'm on hopefully a path to get to over 1,000 subscribers at least this year. So please do subscribe while you're here. It doesn't cost you anything, 100% free. And I'm going to continue giving the facts and going to scour the world for the best news stories and crypto stories so you don't have to. And I'm going to give it to you straight up. And there's no bias here whatsoever. Let's continue on. I've said enough. Tired of, being lied to, folks, and you should too. Enough is enough here. So Bitcoin drops 8%. U.S. market shed $2 trillion in value. Should traders expect an oversold bounce? Well, in my estimation, yes. Let's see what the analysts say. Crypto and stock markets took heavy losses throughout the U.S. trading session. Should traders expect a relief rally due to oversold conditions? Bitcoin and stock markets all sold off sharply after U.S. President Trump shook up financial markets by announcing a list of reciprocal tariffs on several countries. On April 3rd, the S&P saw it actually closed almost 5% down. 4.2% in market open, its most significant single-day decline since June 2020. The Dow fell 3.5%. The NASDAQ dropped 5%. Overall, $1.6 trillion in value is wiped out from the U.S. stock market at open, and it actually continued down a little bit from there. Bitcoin's value dropped 8%, but a positive is bulls seem capable of defending the $80,000 support level. These steep declines essentially stem from uncertainties surrounding the new tariffs and amplify investor concerns about impending recession. So, why is it so uncertain? These analysts, what they get paid for is to do the analytics and to give you proper news, and instead they're also feeding you FUD. Like, what is so uncertain? It's written. He brought these big bulletin boards. We went through it together. There's nothing uncertain about it. There's tariffs, and what we went through yesterday was if countries want these tariffs dropped or reduced, then they should reduce their own tariffs against the states. And, I won't be surprised if within a few days or a week, Trump comes around and says, okay, Israel, you dropped your tariffs to 0. We're going to drop your tariffs to 0, or we're going to drop your tariffs to 5% or something like this. Only then will these other leaders around the world, with brain cells dwindling, it seems, come to some realization that all they need to do is negotiate, and furthermore that all Trump is trying to do is negotiate a better deal for his country. Crypto liquidation soar to 573 million. According to CoinGlass, in the past 24 hours, more than 200,000 traders were liquidated, with the total amount exceeding 573 million. The largest liquidation occurred on Binance, with an Ethereum position worth 11.9 million being forced closed. Are you fucking kidding me? If I had 12 million bucks, and I knew that the last tariff talk made a big dent in the crypto market and the regular, traditional financial markets, like this poor soul lost their entire 12 million bucks. Now, could it be a whale who's got billions, and this is, it's the same to them as $100 is for us, potentially. But, and Ethereum, come on, dude. Why is your money in Ethereum in the first place? Meanwhile, Bitcoin's open interest dropped below 50 billion, reducing market leverage. Joe Wedson, CEO of Alfractal, mentioned that the liquidation heat maps indicate heavy leverage around 80,000, raising the potential for a potential drop. They need writers too. To 64 to 65,000. Bitcoin breaks this level with high trading volume. I doubt it's going to 65,000. It might get back down to 78.5, 76.5. But there seems to be quite a bit of support at those levels. Personally, I bought the dip on Solana today. I'm already in a very good position in Bitcoin from a long time ago. So if I bought more, I'd be averaging up. Whereas with Solana, I'm averaging down still. So interesting. We'll see where it goes. Lots of people got wrecked, it seems. Binance just, these markets, if crypto wants to distinguish themselves from traditional markets, they should come up with something smarter, right? Like Binance should come up with some prompt that pops up a notification on your phone that says beep, 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 beep. Impending downfall, sell. I guess if they did that, then everybody would sell and the things would get even more liquidated. But I'd like to see something like that. It's you knew this was going to happen. Look, on their behalf too, I didn't sell off, right? I'm looking to buy the dip and just keep averaging down personally. This is just a temporary reprise, another accumulation phase, and all the analytics say that by the end of April to mid-May, early June, prices are going to be much higher, potentially up to 160, 170,000 bucks for Bitcoin. So, is it a ploy to allow the billionaires and billionaires' friends to average down on the stock market, liquidate the dummies, and I'm sure guys like Buffett, remember he went all cash about 2 months ago. He's laughing right now, right? He's probably buying in as we speak. 10-year Treasury yield falls 4% as the DXY softens. Is it time to buy the price Bitcoin dip? With the U.S.-led trade war lead to a golden buying opportunity in Bitcoin price or further downside in the short term. April 3rd, yields on long-term U.S. government debt fell to its lowest level in 6 months as investors reacted to growing concerns over the global trade war and the weakening of the U.S. dollar. The yield on the 10-year Treasury note briefly touched 4% down from 4.4% a week earlier, signaling strong demand from buyers. So this actually reminds me of something here. Let's stop here on this point. Weakening U.S. dollar. So Trump gets into office. Now, what Trump's inherited, sadly, is a big old U.S. debt. We go over it every single day. It's right here, $36.7 trillion almost. And this year, the same way you refinance your mortgage, the debt gets refinanced, and certain parts of the debt get refinanced at different times. So let's say you had a house, to kind of make it easy, right? You had a house, you bought it for, your mortgage was $100,000 when you bought it. You needed some more money, so you refinanced $50,000. So then your mortgage was $150,000. So when it comes to the U.S. national debt, it's the same thing. They owed $20 trillion, let's say, and now they owe $36 trillion. So there's this $16 trillion difference. And unlike your house where they take the whole amount, so you first started with $100,000, then you owed $150,000, and they lump it all together, and you have a 5-year or 25-year mortgage on that whole $150,000, right? With the U.S. national debt, these amounts get financed at different times. So $20 trillion might have been financed in the year 2020, and $5 trillion 2022, and let's say the remaining 10 trillion, 15 trillion in a subsequent year. So a big chunk of that U.S. debt, and I had the number about a month ago. It's on one of my shows. They owe a shitload this year. A very big portion, like the biggest portion that's been due in many years, is getting refinanced this year. Like $10 trillion or some crap like that, right? So back to the point that when Trump came in office, he told the Fed chair, Jerome Powell, we need lower interest rates, right? Powell instead said, oh no, we have high inflation. We're only going to reduce the rates twice this year, 0.25% each time. Back to the debt. If this huge $10 trillion debt that has to get refinanced this year gets refinanced at 4 or 5%, they're fucked, right? Like this year, they already paid $950 billion, so we'll call it $1 trillion, just in interest payments, right? And that's at a low interest rate. So what if this year they refinance the huge part of the debt at a high interest rate? Again, they're screwed. So Trump came in and said, we need a low interest rate because we're going to have to refinance this U.S. national debt. A good portion of it comes up this year. I think it's in the fall. And instead of the feds doing something about it, they said, no, we don't need lower interest rates. Inflation's high. We're going to leave the interest rates high so that inflation cools, right? Higher interest rates people are basically buying less, so borrowing less, so that means the inflation will then come down. Trump didn't get what he wanted. Now, we also covered on this show, he didn't get the low interest rates. So what has to happen here? The interest rates, no matter what, have to come down this year. Let's get into tariffs. What's this tariff stuff all about? It's twofold. Number one, the U.S. needs a lower dollar, right, in terms of exports. So if they have higher tariffs, then the dollar will go down in price, and it already did in one day, the US dollar, and then that way it will be more advantageous for other countries to buy things to trade with the US. So if you can buy something, if you're buying a US good for $1 right now, and the dollar goes down by 10, 20 cents, and you can buy the same US good for 80 cents, well, you're going to buy more of it. So that's going to promote exports from the States. Other countries will be able then to afford more of US goods. So that is promoting, even though the tariffs are up, it's promoting more countries to buy their stuff because of a lower priced US dollar. Now, along with that, if the dollar starts falling, what's going to happen is Powell is going to have to also cut interest rates because the buying power of the dollar is going to be less for the locals, right, U.S. citizens. So because of that, they'll be able to afford less. So the interest rates need to be lower so they can borrow more to be able to afford the same things that they can afford now with a strong dollar. Hopefully that all makes sense. That's what this whole trade war is about, folks. It's about leveraging a better deal, as we've touched upon first, that they're basically getting shafted. The States has been getting the raw end of the deal for many, many years. And basically we're saying, I'm tired of it. That's it. Instead of taxing our citizens just to allow other countries to take advantage of us, no, we're going to tax the countries and we're going to make our citizens prominent. So, but again, a big portion of this and the stuff they don't talk about is the interest rates and the refinancing of the debt. That has to happen this year. So once the rates do come down, and it's, make no mistake, no one's going to say anything about it. They're just going to come out. Powell's going to come out one day in Fed meeting. Oh, it seems that inflation is lower than expected, so we can now lower the interest rates an extra time this year, and we're going to lower them 0.75%, and the frickin' stock market and the Bitcoin is going to go flying straight up once that happens. At first glance, a higher risk economic recession may seem negative for Bitcoin. However, lower returns from fixed income investments encourage allocations to alternative assets, including cryptocurrencies. Over time, traders are likely to reduce exposure to bonds, particularly if inflation rises. As a result, the path to a Bitcoin all-time high in 2025 remains plausible. Tariffs create supply shock in the U.S. and impact inflation and fixed income returns. One could argue that the recent announcement U.S. imports tariffs negatively impact corporate profitability, forcing some companies to deleverage and in turn reducing market liquidity. Ultimately, any measure that increases risk aversion tends to have a short-term negative effect on Bitcoin, particularly given its strong correlation with the S&P 500. Alex Merck, Chief Investment Officer of the Portfolio Manager at Merck Investments, said that the tariffs create a supply shock, meaning the reduced availability of goods and services due to rising prices causes an imbalance relative to demand. This effect is amplified if interest rates are declining, potentially paving the way for inflationary pressure. Even if one does not view Bitcoin as a hedge against inflation, the appeal of fixed income investment diminishes significantly in such a scenario. Moreover, if just 5% of the world's $140 trillion bond market seeks higher returns elsewhere, it could translate into $7 trillion potential inflows into stocks, commodities, real estate, gold, and Bitcoin. Right, so with a, bonds fall 4%, people will be like, 4% is not good enough. Where else can I make more money? Well, I can make more in stocks. I can make more in Bitcoin. So this is kind of what this last statement was. Weaker U.S. dollar amid gold all-time highs favor alternative assets. Gold surges to 21 trillion market capitalization as it made consecutive all-time highs, and it still has the potential for significant price upside. Higher prices allow previously unprofitable mining operations to resume, and it encourages further investment in exploration, extraction, and refining. As production expands, the supply growth will naturally act as a limiting factor on gold's long-term bull run. Regardless of trends in the U.S. interest rate, the U.S. dollar is weakened against a basket of foreign currencies as measured by the DXY index. On April 3rd, the index dropped to 102, its lowest level in 6 months, a decline in confidence in the U.S. dollar, even in relative terms, could encourage other nations to explore alternative stores of value, including the biddy. This transition does not happen overnight, but the trade war could lead to a gradual shift away from the U.S. dollar, particularly among countries that feel pressured by its dominant role. While no one expects a return to gold standard or Bitcoin to become a major component of national reserves, any movement away from the dollar strengthens Bitcoin's long-term upside potential and reinforces its potential position as an alternative asset. To put things into perspective, Japan, China, Hong Kong, Singapore collectively hold $2.63 trillion in U.S. treasuries. If these regions choose to retaliate, bond yields could reverse their trend, increasing the cost of new debt issuance for the U.S. government and further weakening the dollar. In such a scenario, investors would likely avoid adding exposure to stocks, ultimately favoring scarce alternative assets like Bitcoin. Timing Bitcoin's market bottom is nearly impossible, but the fact that the 82,000 support level has held despite worsening global economic uncertainty is an encouraging sign of resilience. Yeah, so I don't see it falling behind or below 78.5 if it falls anymore. I mean, when we go back to the crypto bubbles view and we go into the hourly, I guess there's a couple that are down a bit, but there's also quite a few that are up. And even in the daily, it's not as red as expected. You would think that everything would be in the red, considering, huge tariffs, worldwide news, etc., etc. But, not everything is in the red. We've got some green stuff, green grass, and the hourly. We've got a fair amount in the green. We'll see what happens tomorrow if it's another dip. If it is, again, I bought the dip today. If it goes down tomorrow, I'm going to buy the dip again tomorrow, and just kind of keep it going that way to get the price on sale. It's on sale right now is how you have to look at it. It's not time to run. It's time to buy. Bitcoin is still on track to hit 200,000 in 2025, despite the Trump tariff unrest, says Analysts. Bitcoin's been rocked by Trump tariffs, but the head researchers from Bitwise and Standard Chartered and others remain upbeat about the asset. This is their commercial, by the way. They've got the world's most interesting man as their, I think it's Bitwise who's got this guy in their Bitcoin commercial. In recent weeks, U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs have weighed on Bitcoin's price, but some experts remain undaunted by Thursday's market declines and still expect the asset springing to new heights this year. Bitwise's 200,000 year-end price target for Bitcoin remains unchanged. The crypto asset manager's head of research, Ryan Rasmussen, told Decrypt on Thursday. Once the market settles from its Liberation Day chaos, we'll finally start seeing the market pull back upwards, he said. We like to use the analogy that good news gets stored as dry powder for when the volatility uncertainty ultimately subsides. Bitcoin price fell 5.5% on Thursday as investors digested Trump's reciprocal tariffs to trade around 82,000. According to the crypto data provider CoinGecko, on Wall Street, equities dropped on growth concerns and fears retaliatory trade measures, with the tech-focused Nasdaq plunging more than 5%. The performance of the largest cryptocurrency by market capitalization has largely correlated with the tech sector over the past few years. The trend has become even more noticeable amid gold's record-breaking climb. But Rasmussen said it's worth zooming out, considering that Bitcoin has outperformed the precious metal, S&P 500, and tech-heavy Nasdaq since November 5th. Over the past few months, we've had an avalanche of great news, he said, pointing to the White House establishing a Bitcoin reserve, regulatory shifts, and sovereign wealth funds. This market really should already be at 150,000 if we didn't have the looming fear of tariffs. I agree. Rasmussen thinks some tariffs will be rolled back and that the Federal Reserve is still on track to cut interest rates this year, despite the central bank being in wait-and-see mode amid shifts in trade and immigration policy. Standard Chartered's global head of digital assets research, Jeff Kendrick, reiterated his 200,000 year-end price target for Bitcoin in a research note, saying analysts at the British multinational still view the asset as a winner on Wednesday. Cosmo Jiang, a general partner at the crypto asset manager Pantera, told Decrypt that Trump's tariffs are effectively a negotiating tool, this is what I've been saying, which could lead to a quick recovery across markets if the president becomes satisfied with other nations' response. This is what I'm saying, like, how stupid are these other leaders around the world? Some guy, crypto asset manager Pantera, right? Tariffs are effectively a negotiating tool. No fucking kidding. Like, why don't other leaders around the world see this? Just like uncertainty was artificially injected in, so too can it be taken out after Trump's administration feels it has won concessions, he said. Digital assets, as the tip of the spear in growth assets, were the first to pull back and may also be the first to bottom out and rebound. Bitcoin may be ceding ground to gold, but the leading cryptocurrency's portrayal as a store of value puts it in a better position than most digital assets, according to Jess Hallgrave, CEO of crypto user interface company Ruin. Not a good name. Ruan, formerly known as Wallet Connect. Digital assets that have yet to establish a strong market type fit may experience volatility or even a downturn as capital seeks safer havens, she told Decrypt. Established projects with real-world adoption and clear utility, such as these in DeFi, may continue to thrive. Among the bearish, Bitcoin needs to stay above the 76,500 until Americans pay their taxes on April 15th in order to maintain any positive momentum. Arthur Hayes, co-founder and former CEO of crypto exchange BitMEX, said on X, formerly known as Twitter, on Wednesday. A week ago, he foresaw Bitcoin hitting 110,000 first, citing the Fed's view on tariff-linked inflation being transitory, and a slowdown in the central bank's balance sheet drawdown. Yeah, so, I can't state enough that effectively a negotiating tool. I think what's going to happen, since, it's a game of follow the leader and no one knows what the hell they're doing in terms of leadership around the world, I feel like what's going to happen is somebody with half a brain, and doesn't seem to be that many out there, but this Israeli guy already came out and said, okay, that's it, zero taxes. Someone else with half a brain, another leader, is going to come out and say, okay, you know what, zero taxes. And then there's going to be this whirlwind of all these countries coming out and saying, zero taxes, we're so sorry, we'll kiss your ass. All it's going to take is for Trump to come out, and I think he's doing this on purpose, and he's waiting because this is a good way to find out who's an idiot, who's a good leader, and who's a bad leader. So right away, this Netanyahu guy came out and said, okay, sorry, our mistake. We've been taxing you guys to the nines for decades. No taxes for the U.S. All that's needed is for Trump to come out and say, well, thank you, sir, Israeli Prime Minister. You know what? Since you came out and gracefully said no taxes, well, we'll remove all our taxes, all our tariffs too. And, no tariffs, both ways. Then and only then these nutcases are going to come out and say, oh, we're going to do the same. Let's kiss his ass. It's not about kissing ass, folks. It's about doing what is best for your country. And no one seems to be doing that except this Trump fellow. Regardless of whether you like him, whether you don't like him, whether you like the way he talks, whether you don't like it, he's definitely doing what seems to be the best for the country, and that is stopping this gravy train of money that just keeps on flowing out with the national debt, with, now what I saw, these tariffs even as high as 97%. Like, are you kidding me? He's just trying to stop all this bullshit. And, it turns out the Democrats have been in power for 3/4 of the time over the past 20, 30 years. It's always the Dems, and they just keep screwing things up. And it seems like, is it screwing things up, or is it just continually putting money in their pockets and this is what they want, instead of putting the money back in the people's pockets? The Democrats they basically made the rich richer and the poor poorer. And then here we've got a Republican. It's like the roles have been reversed now, right? The Republicans now are the conservatives, and the Democrats are the socialists, right? So we'll see how it all plays out. I feel like Bitcoin's going to have a bit of a bounce overnight today and tomorrow. If it dips more, it could get down to this, back to this 77,000, 78,000 before a real bounce comes out. But I still feel bullish, like these analysts, that in the next couple months we're going to see all-time highs. And again, all it's going to take is for one person to come out, one country to come out and say, we're going to remove all our tariffs, and then just for Trump to say, you know what, you did the right thing, we'll remove ours too. And then there's going to be a flood of countries saying, we're removing our tariffs, removing our tariffs, removing our tariffs. In the same way that we saw the stock market go down and the BitcoinPrice go down and, the crypto go to shit. Imagine how much things are going to pump if this exact scenario plays out, where Now suddenly all these tariffs are removed, and there's negotiations between countries and friendship and no tariffs, and right. Think of that scenario, and this is why you want to be buying the dip. There's lots of money, tons of wealth around the world, folks. There's $900 trillion in assets around the world. So go get some. Money is abundant. Money is everywhere. It's time that's scarce. So spend your time wisely. Start saving today. Spend less money than what you earn, so that way you always stay in the green, and start investing when you're young. Start investing in your late teens and your early 20s, and ideally you can retire when you're 40 or 45. If you've got a great idea, start with your great idea today. Don't wait around for tomorrow. Even if you're not ready, start today and things will slowly come together for you. Trust me on that. And even if it doesn't work out, you at least have the satisfaction that you tried, and you'll learn. Even if it doesn't work out, you will learn from that venture, and the next time you give it a go, you won't be as afraid. You'll make some better moves because you made some additions, some changes, some positive things that you learned from your first try, you'll put into your second try. If you found the stream enjoyable, folks, please do like, comment, and especially subscribe. It's completely free, and it would mean a lot for me and the show. And we will see you on the next stream, folks. Thanks so much for joining.